What's up, everyone? We're back here on the Fran Long Show, going to talk about the Mayhem Classic and whether we can consider it a successful event. So, looking at the Mayhem Classic and the other semifinals, kind of boiled it down to 4 different questions I had about whether or not an event will be successful. But before we dive in, I just want to say congratulations to Austin Hatfield, Colton Mertens on the men's side, and Fisa Gaffey and Abigail Dommett on the women's side for punching their tickets to the 2025 CrossFit Games. I'm sure they got some relief to get it done right off the bat so they can focus on training and potentially the World Fitness Project over the next couple months. But for them, congratulations, and hope you enjoy your trip to Albany and the CrossFit Games later this summer. So looking at the Mayhem Classic and the other semifinals, and to a lesser extent, some of the off-season competitions we have with the games level athletes, and I was looking at it to see whether or not the Mayhem Classic was successful at the end of the day. So my 4 questions to determining the success of a semifinal. Did Games caliber athletes get the tickets to the CrossFit Games? Was it enjoyable to watch? Did the athletes get paid, and did the organizers make any money? So with that, let's dive into each of them. So kicking it off with number 1, did Games caliber athletes get the tickets to the CrossFit Games? So looking at it and comparing CrossFit to, say, golf, for example. On golf, you have the golf courses. The golf courses can ultimately make the tournament what it is. So you have the Augusta National, you got Amen Corner, so many memorable moments that help determine the winner of the Masters. You have the Players' Championship at TPC Sawgrass. You got that 17th floating green. You've got the 15th hole at the Waste Management Open in Phoenix with the stadium and the atmosphere we have there. So all those different golf courses, have these locations or have these, holes that create these memorable experience and help determine the outcome of the golf tournaments themselves. But for all these tournaments, at the end of the day, the best golfer over the course of the weekend wins the championship. And I think we're probably going to see that now in the semifinals where each of them are going to be individually programmed. We're not seeing like in the regionals era or a couple years of semifinals where CrossFit programs everything across all the events. We're going to go back to the sanctionals model where each competition will have independent programming. And with that, it could potentially impact or benefit or potentially hurt, depending on what the programming is, certain kind of athletes. So when looking at it, obviously we had James Sprague in the competition field, the reigning fittest man on earth. If there was kind of the stereotypical test of fitness we see at the CrossFit Games, we would expect him to win, assuming all else being the same since last summer. But we didn't. We saw programming coming from Rich Froning. You had a ton of squats. Not saying whether they're good or they're bad. That was just what we had at the Mayhem Classic. And with the programming, Austin Hatfield and Colton Mertens came out on top on the men's side. Fisa Gaffey and Abigail Dommett came out on top on the other women's side. And those 4, they were the best athletes at Mayhem, and they definitely deserve to be at the CrossFit Games. All of them have been there before. All of them certainly deserve to go back again this year. Now, if we saw the same, 20 men and 18 women line up next to each other at the Syndicate Crown, would we still expect the same 4 athletes to get their CrossFit Games tickets? Maybe, but also maybe not. And I think that's okay now in this new wave of semifinals that some competitions will benefit certain athletes and some competitions will benefit other athletes. There's been comments that athletes on shorter size benefited at Mayhem. Well, at the Fittest Experience the last couple of years when they've had their event in Austin, the average size of the men's podium finishers, I think, is about 5'10", maybe 5'11". So potentially, historically, the TFX program is going to benefit taller athletes. And so we'll start to see that. Hopefully, this group of semifinals can stay consistent for a couple of years so we can start to see what the different programming trends are and one athlete's benefit at Mayhem versus what athletes will benefit at TFX versus Torian versus Syndicate Crown. So with that, we do need CrossFit HQ to kind of hold the course for what the current season structure is, and potentially with some new ownership, that may not be what the horizon brings. But at the end of the day, for the semifinal athletes, did Games caliber athletes get to the CrossFit Games? And with Mayhem, we can definitely say yes. Number 2, was the event entertaining to watch? So CrossFit as a sport is in a pretty pivotal spot at the moment for its future, and we need the semifinals to draw in an audience. Like ideally, everybody would be there, but if they're not there in person, if they're watching online, having those eyes will come in, make sure the sponsors out there are getting the return for their investment, which will then help grow the sport and kind of bring new sponsors in. So for the Mayhem Classic, I definitely think, from my perspective, it was an entertaining competition to watch. I think it was well run, having kind of a compressed timeline on Saturday afternoon and Sunday certainly benefited. And I think that's also resonated across the larger audience. So we are less than a week out. So day one, their live streams kind of closing in on 200,000 viewers, where the day two live streams, I think, was 188,000 when I looked today, April 10th. So 5 days out from the final day of competition, we're closing in on 200,000 live streams for them, which I think when you compare to Wodapalooza, it was 2.5 months ago. Its day one stream for individuals was sitting around 240,000, while its day two is sitting at 208,000. So for Mayhem, specifically the day one, to be less than 10,000 live stream views from Wodapalooza, which is one of the premier events of the off season, definitely think it holds true that Mayhem was entertaining to watch and the fans viewed in to watch the sport's finest. My number 3 question on whether the Mayhem Classic was successful or not, did the athletes get paid? So with CrossFit, a lot of these athletes are needing to dedicate essentially equivalent to a full-time job into their training. A lot of them are able to work it around a coaching structure, a flexible schedule. But at the end of the day, to compete at the highest level, you need to train essentially full-time. Unfortunately, we're at a point with the prize money where not everybody gets paid, even at the highest level. So looking at the CrossFit Games this summer, only the top 20 out of 30 athletes will receive a paycheck. And even then, with the structure it comes in, I think there's only the top 10 or so are going to receive a check over $10,000. So it's a little tough that way. When we look at it from a semifinal structure, ideally, again, in a perfect world, everybody who goes will be able to cover their travel costs. But again, we're just not there yet. But from an elite level, if the top handful can cover their costs there, with the athletes who are advancing to the CrossFit Games being able to hopefully fund that trip as well from an expense standpoint, I think we're winning from that perspective. Mayhem, they're the only ones that have announced a prize purse for the semifinals. I think it was $87,000 at the end of the day in prize money, with $15,000 going to first, $10,000 going to second, and $5,000 going to the third place finisher overall. So a pretty decent sum of money. $15,000 was more than anybody who was winning at semifinals last year. So a step up from that perspective. They also threw in $3,000 for the winners of the final event as well. So again, made it worth the athletes' while at that top end. So yeah, I think it was certainly a success from an athlete perspective of where we are from the sport today. And my final question, did Mayhem make money? So looking at this one, I think for the long-term growth of the sport, the organizers are going to need to make money over the long term. Running the events, organizing it, purchasing the equipment, renting out facilities, having prize money, all of that kind of adds up. And if year after year, the organizers are going to be out of pocket, it's probably not the recipe for a long-term competition. So we do need to see profitable event organizers running these competitions so we can have events with the elite level. Obviously, having a community event goes a long way into helping that out, just because everything kind of is spread out across a larger group. But we do need organizers to make money at the end of the day. For Mayhem, it's going to be a little bit trickier than yes or no. Mayhem has such kind of a vast fitness empire in terms of businesses. So was the Mayhem Classic potentially a lost leader to get more people to sign up for Mayhem programming and Mayhem affiliate fees with all the other businesses like Froning Farms that are in the mix? Who knows at the end of the day if Mayhem Classic will be profitable on its own or if just the larger organization wins. But it is important to look at that from a finance perspective, just so we can have these competitions running again next year. So from that, I think certainly the first three are definite yeses. We got games level athletes going to the CrossFit Games. We got an exciting and interesting competition to watch from a fan perspective, and the athletes made a little bit of money for their hard work. Then the final question: did Mayhem make money? It's kind of a wait and see. So with that, thanks for watching. Let me know if you got any questions in the comments. Follow us on Instagram at Front Lung Analytics. And with that, have a good day and happy fitnessing.